Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Spanish Football Podcast. I'm Phil Kitromilides. Sid Lowe is with me as ever. Hello, Sydney.
Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. I did something amazing yesterday, and I
Commentate
didn't wait.
a football match
I
with
did
me?
that. That was fantastic. And then I didn't wait for the final game of the round of games. I thought, no, I'm actually going to get a decent amount of sleep for once. And then it got ruined by waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning anyway, thinking about how I was going to write about Atletico Madrid's destruction of Real Madrid.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
that's
think
an interesting insight into behind the scenes, into how Sid's mind works. Waking up at 4
honestly,
a.m. trying
the amount of
to
times I woke up in
get
the
the
morning
column.
and on the phone there's an email to myself with a line or an idea, and sometimes the following morning it doesn't make any sense to me anymore. what was I saying? What was I doing?
Not even you can decipher it. That's
Sometimes,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, you mentioned the Madrid derby. We will talk about that extensively in just a moment because it was the big game and the big result of Matchday 7. Here's what else happened. On Friday, we had our first 0-0 draw of the season. It finished goalless between Girona and Espanyol in a Catalan derby at Montilivi. Then on Saturday, Getafe and Levante played out a 1-1 draw. Atletico Madrid thrashed Real Madrid 5-2 at the Metropolitano. Mallorca got their first win of the season, beating Alaves 1-0. And Villarreal got their third win in a week, beating Athletic Club 1-0 also. Then on Sunday, somehow Sevilla managed to beat Rayo 1-0. They had one shot on target. It obviously went in. Rayo obviously missed every bloody chance that they have. And still only one win all season for the mighty boys from the Barrio. Elche continued their absolutely extraordinary start to the season. Another win for Eder Serabia's team. They're still unbeaten, Sid. They are still unbeaten after 7 rounds of fixtures. And they're in a Champions League spot, which is really quite ridiculous. They beat Celta Vigo 2-1, which ended Celta Vigo's run of 5 consecutive 1-1s. I was really hoping this was going to finish 1-1. I mean, that would
Me
be
too.
historic.
Yeah.
It's never happened before, by the way. No one's ever had 6 1-1s in a row in the history of La Liga. Celta were very close. Barcelona came from behind to beat Real Sociedad 2-1 at Montjuic. An instant impact from Lamine Yamal, who came off the bench and seconds later set up Robert Lewandowski for the winner. And Real Betis beat Osasuna 2-0 at La Cartuja in the game which Sid did not watch. We do not know if Valencia are playing Oviedo this evening.
No.
They're supposed to at Mestalla, but there is extremely heavy rainfall forecast for the Valencia region. All school in the city of Valencia has been cancelled today. People have been told not to leave their house unless they have to, but the game is still on at the time of recording. We will see whether or not it is called off. We will see whether or not Sid makes it down to Valencia. I've told him not to go. I've told him not
You
to go,
have.
but if it's on, he will go.
You're the sensible one in this partnership. There's no doubt about that.
Yes. And you're the very, very silly one. Anyway, if you want some more Spanish football content, why not join us over at patreon.com/TSFP. Patrons get the Monday and Friday pods without any adverts, plus a Q&A pod and a bonus pod every week. There's the newsletter for all patrons. There's the TSFP diary, which has been really good, actually. It's been taking you behind the scenes and how to cover Spanish football, and it's been a very good listen. Access to the Discord, and you can join us from just €4.75 a month. If in the UK, it's about £1 a week for loads of access to loads of content. Anyway, let's start with the derby, shall we?
Yeah.
Because Atletico Madrid scored 5 goals against Real Madrid for the first time in 75 years. Me and Al did the preview for this on Friday, and we were predicting another slightly tense, slightly not a very enjoyable aesthetically game, probably going to finish 1-1 as the last 3 derbies had. And we were obviously completely wrong. This was a really good game to watch.
It was a brilliant game to watch. And, not just that prediction, as you say, the 1-1, which is the way that these derbies have been going. But we were talking last week a lot. I shouldn't blame you. I should only blame myself and put my hands up. And I was saying I was concerned that Real Madrid were going to become boringly good. This time around, they were fantastically, entertainingly bad, which is great. And actually, let's stop just there and say, it wasn't about Real Madrid being bad, although there were flaws, and we'll go on to analyse them. It was about how brilliantly I thought Atletico Madrid played, and how Atletico Madrid had so very, very clearly identified the ways that they wanted to go at Real Madrid. Now, you think back to a couple of years ago when Atletico Madrid won the first derby of the season 3-1, at a point at which Real Madrid had started really well, similar patterns today, and they won 3-1. And after that game, it was basically it was the end of Fran Garcia, who'd started, and Atletico Madrid had targeted him, the long ball to that space between the left side of centre back and the left back, and they were putting players in the box, and they were beating them in the air, and they were playing with, with high intensity. There was a lot of that pattern was repeated this time around. And when we saw Fran Garcia struggle last time, we saw Alvaro Carreras and Dean Houston struggle a little bit this time. But it was all over the pitch. Atletico Madrid pushing very, very high, getting the ball into the penalty area very, very quickly, using Sorloth as the player to kind of push Real Madrid right back into their 6-yard box, allowing a little bit of space for Julian Alvarez to play behind them. And I thought they did it brilliantly. And I think there's so many elements to pick up on. But I think it was the relentlessness of the way that Atletico Madrid played that really struck me, how determined they were to keep on going at Real Madrid. And then the really big thing for me was that they kept doing it, having gone 2-1 down. And bear in mind the context of this. You've got an Atletico Madrid team that go a goal up, that keep on going, that they hit the post. They have a couple of really, really good opportunities that they don't take. You have a couple of chances for Sorloth, which he doesn't take. And then you get Real Madrid, bang, 2 shots, 2 goals out of basically nowhere. And at that point, the context of an Atletico Madrid team who were conceding a goal every other shot, an Atletico Madrid team that were taking 10 shots to score, that were
they were 12 points behind Real Madrid.
Exactly. At that point that you're thinking 12 points behind, it would have been so easy for them to crumble. And they did the complete opposite, and they kept coming back at Real Madrid, and they won 5-2 entirely deservedly. And the second half was different, because once they'd gone 3-2 up with the penalty, it then became a game of control. But some of the basic ingredients of the intensity were there all the way through, and Real Madrid just could not match them at any point.
Yeah, and that was something that was said after the game. Xabi Alonso said we didn't compete, and Danny Carvajal with that old phrase, which it's funny with all the technical analysis in football, it still holds true. Atletico Madrid wanted it more, and they did want it more, and you could see it with the intensity with which they approached this game. Let's just also mention the context in the build-up to this game. Atletico Madrid didn't have 72 hours between their last game and this game. They played on Wednesday night against Rayo Vallecano. Real Madrid had played on Tuesday night. Quite a bit had been made of that. Not as much had been made of it had it been, the other way around, and Real Madrid were less than 72 hours. But the people in the Atletico Madrid media kept mentioning it. It was an issue. It was brought up in the pre-match press conference. But you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell.
And it's probably worth drawing a slight distinction here. I think a lot was made of it in terms of the build up to it and the discussion of it, but not by Simeone. And Simeone avoided that. There was a couple of little sideways mentions of it in terms of, after the game against Rayo Vallecano, it was like, right, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, we're ready and we're prepared. We give ourselves a couple of days to do this. And that was a little sideways mention. And there was another one, I think, just before this game, where he said something about the preparation and the time they had, but it wasn't. It was done as a sort of as a subtle mention, and I think one of the reasons for that was about the message he was sending to his players about not wanting to put in place a message that gave them a ready-made excuse, if you see what I mean. So this is if you create, and actually, I wonder if at institutional level this is a problem that Madrid are making for themselves. If you create, if you like, an analysis or a narrative of victimhood, you also create excuses. You see what I mean? You also create a justification for not doing it. And I think it was really important from Atletico Madrid's point of view to not do that in the build-up to this game. And it's not just that; it's that they came off the Rayo Vallecano game having to do what they had to do to win it. They didn't go into this comfortably. They went into this having to come back from 2-1 down to win 3-2 against Rayo Vallecano. Talking to one of the coaching staff of Atletico Madrid after this game, and he was saying, what we came from and what we were trying really hard to right, you keep that momentum going rather than allow yourself to think, we're exhausted already. And they did it brilliantly. There's a couple of other things obviously point out. We're talking about the intensity and the way they played. And the 2 wide men I thought were brilliant. both Nico Gonzalez and Giuliano Simeone. And Giuliano Simeone is almost comic when you watch him play. You know, he's kind of gritting his teeth. You feel like the nerves, the veins on the side of his head are going to explode any minute. It's kind of almost cartoonish. But then the performance in the middle of the pitch of Coque and Barrios, I thought was absolutely brilliant as well.
Coque making his 43rd appearance in this fixture, drawing level with Sergio Ramos as the player with the most appearances in the Madrid derby. Should we mention Julian then?
Yes, I think we should. And that's the other part of the context, which we've not gone to yet. But yeah, absolutely. You know, 7 days earlier, or correct me if I'm wrong, actually 6 days earlier, isn't it? Because they played Sunday last week, or was it? Yeah, they played Sunday last week. So 6 days earlier, Julian Alvarez had sat on the bench muttering, "Always me," having been changed, having missed a penalty for the first time in his Atletico Madrid career. Now, he said in midweek that he didn't actually say "always me." He was swearing at himself because he'd had another bad performance, but he was in a position in which it wasn't quite working for him, in which he hadn't scored since the opening day of the season. On that opening day of the season, he'd scored an amazing free kick, but then hit the post with a really brilliant chance, which would have ended it. And in the end, they lost to Espanyol. It kind of wasn't happening. And you have all this tension and debate around him. And I actually think you had a very clear, how do I put this? Salvage operation, for want of a better phrase, in midweek, with Simeone trying to say, no, we're very much on Julian Alvarez's side. We want him to be
he's our best player.
Future. I think and he's our best player, and we want to look after him. We want to take care of him. We want him to be here for a long time. And I think there you felt a little bit of that fear that, hang on, we've got a really good player here, and there's a risk that either he doesn't become that really good player, because he had a really good season last year. I think it was 18 league goals, 20 something in total across all competitions. That you know, there was a risk that what happens if he doesn't feel happy? What happens if he doesn't feel backed up? What happens if at some point he wants to move on? They're aware that there'd been interest from Barcelona. And I think there was a little bit of concern there. Obviously, the immediate concern, his performance level and making him part of a team that works. But a long-term one of, can't believe it, we're going to have this really great player who comes to us, and at some point, we're going to lose him. And then in midweek, you get him play brilliantly, score a hat-trick to win against Rayo Vallecano, then play brilliantly again in the derby, 2 more goals of penalty, and which is, I think, significant because the last penalty he took against Real Madrid was that one that he scored, but supposedly touched twice, and it was taken off them. And, of course, the last penalty taken at all was the miss against Mallorca. And he was brilliant again. And I think that was very, very significant emotionally for everybody, but obviously above all for Julian Alvarez himself.
A tremendous performance from Atletico Madrid. It's been difficult to try and recall a performance just as dominant against Real Madrid, and kind of against what we were expecting as well. Remember, you know, the worst start ever under Diego Simeone up against the Real Madrid side who had won 6 out of 6. It's the first manita, and don't underestimate the importance, the cultural importance of scoring that 5th goal, la manita, the little hand, one goal for each finger on the hand, which is a big thing here in Spain. It was on the front pages of the papers the next day, that word, la manita. It's been repeated often, hysterically on the radio and TV in the last 48 hours or so. It's a big deal to put 5 past your eternal rivals.
It is. Just a very quick thing. I don't know about you, but I've been really struck. I mean, maybe I'm just an old man or have a long memory, by how in all this talk of this, and this is huge, and it's the first time they've scored 5 in 75 years, I've been struck how nobody's talked about the 4-0 at the Calderon.
I think people have. I've heard people mention it.
I've not heard it. Okay, well, I'm glad you have, because I've not heard it even mentioned, and I find it quite baffling. Yeah. But anyway, there you go.
I've heard it mentioned, but like I said, that wasn't a manita. It wasn't a 5.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, but it was huge at the time. And I think, you know, what I remember about the game, I really love that. I remember coming down the stairs at the old Calderon, and there being this kind of bottleneck on the corner. I'm thinking, why is everyone stopped on the way out? And it was because they were all stopped taking photographs of the scoreboard.
Did you do the same at the Metropolitano?
I did this time round, yeah, but by then the stadium was empty. I didn't have any, and I was on the pitch, so it was kind of different. I wasn't having the difficulties of escaping. I didn't see those crowds this time round of people taking pictures of the scoreboards, but I'm pretty sure people were.
Let's talk about Real Madrid, and obviously this monumentally disappointing performance from them all over the pitch. I can't think of anyone who played particularly well, with the exception maybe of Arda Güler in the first half with a goal and an assist, and in that position, kind of consolidating himself as being someone who can be in that first 11. But there was really no reaction from Real Madrid, and that's what I was really, really struck by. No reaction from Real Madrid in the second half. Of course, they only had 2 shots on target. Those were the 2 goals. There was nothing when Atletico Madrid took Sorloth off in the 66th minute and basically kind of invited the pressure on from Real Madrid. We've got 25 minutes to go. We're taking Sorloth off. We're leaving Julian up. We're going to sit back and defend. Come and get us. Come and try and break us down. And absolutely couldn't. Of course, Dean Howson didn't play well. Alvaro Carreras didn't play well. Fede Valverde's been sort of borderline anonymous all season. There were 2 bits of brilliance in the 2 goals. One of them was handed to Real Madrid by some poor defending from Robin Lenormand, but Kylian Mbappe's finish for the first goal is excellent. Vinicius's assist for the second goal is fantastic as well. But that was kind of it, There was none of the organisation, none of the solidity, none of the energy, none of the high press, none of that. There was nothing.
No, absolutely, and there are lots of elements to pick up on. And one of them, just to pick up on what you were saying there, from the change of Sorloth and the invitation to Real Madrid to come and get us.
I thought, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? This is too early. You need Sorloth on there.
Yeah. Well, I thought so as well, but actually it was managed brilliantly, and I think I'd pick up your phrase and use it, which I think is a really, really good way of expressing this. You're saying this idea of come and get us. It's not just that Madrid didn't get them. Madrid didn't even really come to them.
No.
Madrid had the ball and moved it around in front of them, but didn't do anything with it, didn't get anywhere, didn't go for them in the slightest. Atletico Madrid managed that, I thought, brilliantly, although in part because I thought Real Madrid was so blunt. There was nothing there. And throughout this game, there was very, very little, and I just don't want to labour this point, but to go back to what I was saying before about Real Madrid get those 2 goals with their only 2 shots. And the emotional impact for Atleti at that point must have been huge. And actually, Sorloth was saying post-game, that's the hardest part, in a way, the psychological part of it, of feeling like you've dominated and then thinking, I don't believe it, it's happening again. And it didn't stop Atletico Madrid this time around, and it didn't project Real Madrid either. And I think some of those things that you're talking about are really interesting. First of all, we've been talking about how much we like Dean Howson as a defender that brings the ball out, but we haven't seen him put under pressure in the air, and he didn't respond very well. I wonder if maybe with Rudiger that's slightly different, but Howson certainly didn't deal with it well. We've been talking about how kind of low-key excellent Alvaro Carreras is, and his decision-making's been good, his positioning's been good. And this time he was put under a huge amount of pressure on the right by a combination of Giuliano Simeone and then one other. Sometimes Barrios going to that side, sometimes, of course, Marco Llorente overlapping on that side. And he couldn't really deal with them. Wasn't given a huge amount of help either. And I thought he had a very difficult game. Then you look at the centre of the pitch, and a lot of the focus has been on putting Bellingham back in. And I think it's justified, actually, for some of the focus to be on putting Bellingham back in. Is it a bit too soon? He'd played, I think, 28 minutes until this game, or maybe even less than that. I'm not sure now, since he'd come back from the shoulder operation. Didn't look quite right, but it's more that it meant a reconstructing of that midfield. And I felt like I don't want to overplay this, and I'm conscious that it's really easy to kind of go down this route and really dig at this idea. And so I don't want to overplay it, but I don't want to mention it. It felt a little bit like what Xabi Alonso had done was accommodate with his team rather than be convinced, if you see what I mean, bringing Bellingham back in and repositioning some of the pieces. And Arda Güler, who he'd been trying to turn into this central midfielder, or part of the midfield 3 at least, now is up on the right-hand side, which means no Mastantuono. No, I'm not saying that if Mastantuono plays on that right-hand side and Güler plays inside, that Real Madrid necessarily play better. Who knows? But I felt a little bit like there was an accommodation there that didn't entirely work. I thought we were confronted by something that we've been talking about a lot this season, and you've just mentioned it there, which is that a Real Madrid team that wants to press high, that wants to squeeze the play and narrow those gaps, is in part a victim of its success in doing that, because it doesn't have the space to run. And that has been, I think, a problem for Valverde, and I think it's been a problem for Vinicius, who are 2 players who run through space really well, but when there isn't much space, they don't do it. And I think with Valverde, there's this contradiction there, which I find difficult to get my head around. And I suspect, actually, Xabi Alonso is finding it a little bit difficult to fit, which is that if you want to press high and pressure the deep midfielder of the other team and have the energy to press high, you want Valverde to do that, to lead some of that press. But Valverde then is left without the space to run into, which is what makes him a good player. He's not a central midfielder in the Xabi Alonso mold, or in the Pedri mold, or in the Cruz mode, or in the Luka Modric mold. That kind of close stuff he just doesn't do. And I think he's had a really difficult season because I think systemically, this structure doesn't benefit him, doesn't help him. He can help it, and he can help everyone in the team do their things, but I don't think he plays particularly well. And I think we've seen some of the flaws in his game. And just all the way through the team, you know, the best player was, in my opinion, in the Real Madrid team, as you've mentioned, was Arda Güler. And that was with him up on the right-hand side. And I thought Madrid were poor all the way through. And I thought some of it was a one-off and different to what they've done so far this season. Some of it maybe was a product of what they're trying to do, and a kind of a bump in the road, yes, but also as I say, a consequence of how they're trying to play. I also think, and I don't want to labour this point, but I think it's worth mentioning. I actually haven't got the numbers in front of me now, but I won't be far wrong because it was roughly this. Real Madrid so far had played against the teams in 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th, and 14th. And we were looking at this and saying, you know, we can see a structure, and we absolutely could, we absolutely can. But they hadn't played really good teams yet, and this is the first really good team, and they've been walloped, which isn't to mean necessarily that they'll go and play another good team and get walloped again. It doesn't necessarily work like that, but it is a warning sign.
And Espanyol, who are 7th.
Yes, and Espanyol, who are 7th, yeah.
Well, you talk about getting walloped against good teams. The previous big game against a big team, it was in the Club World Cup, and they got walloped 4-0 by
against a
PSG.
very good team, in fairness. Yeah, a very good team. And obviously that was early, and Xabi Alonso was very keen after that game to say this belongs to last season. This isn't about the new, you know, Alonso was effectively saying this is what I've inherited, but we're going to move in a different direction. I think we have to give Alonso the benefit of the doubt, because I think there definitely are structural things that we've seen that are better. And actually, I would say attitudinal things that we've seen that are better this season. But in this game, those were undone.
A big win for Atletico Madrid, 5-2 against Real Madrid. Real Madrid are already in eastern Kazakhstan to play.
I was thinking about this.
Almaty.
In fact, I think this might have been one of the emails I sent myself in the middle of the night. I was thinking this is a kind of result for Real Madrid where you just want to get as far away from it as you possibly can, which is lucky because they've gone 6,500 kilometers away.
Sending emails to yourself in the middle of the night. There we go. Fantastic.
I think that's that's a pod title, is it? Emails in the middle of the night.
I think so. Let's move on and talk about Barcelona and their 2-1 win against Real Sociedad. They were actually 1-0 down massively against the run of play. I think they were up a sort of 86% possession against Real Sociedad. But La Real took the lead through an emotional Álvaro Odriozola, who wasn't supposed to be in the starting 11, but John Aramburu dropped out at the last minute. In came Odriozola for his first league start since the 16th of May, 2024, and he scored the opener for Real Sociedad. Then Barcelona got back on level terms. Jules Koundé powering home a header, an assist from Marcus Rashford. Jules Koundé becoming the 10th different scorer for Barcelona in the league already. And then Lamine Yamal came off the bench, and haven't counted the number of seconds, but it might be 50 or 60 seconds later, he was setting up Robert Lewandowski. Brilliant assist, massive, powerful header from Lewandowski. And Barcelona 2-1. They should have scored more, although La Real also had a few chances as well. The impact from Lamine, Sid, it was instant, it was extraordinary, and it was almost expected by the crowd, because the level of expectation, as soon as they saw him warming up, was immense.
Yeah, it was slightly comic in a way, wasn't it? It was like, here he comes. He's going to resolve it. And come on, leave him alone. It's like, no, don't leave him alone. There he is. And actually, that's one of the things that's been so striking about Lamine Yamal is all this pressure. And me in responsible adult mode or old man mode, let's calm down. Let's not put the pressure on the kid. The person putting the pressure on the kid is the kid. Him celebrating, putting the crown on his head. He's not a kid.
He's 18.
Okay, sorry, he's not a kid
adult
anymore. That's true.
Okay.
He's still a kid. He's the one that embraces it, and he comes on and immediately starts going at people, makes things happen, takes pressure away from some of the other players. The assist was brilliant. He did 2 or 3 other really, really good things as well. I still think that Barcelona actually trod a pretty fine line, and me and you were commentating this, and we're saying, towards the end they were that high line they play, and let's not go down this route again and again and again, because that high line is part of why they're so good. But in the last 20 minutes, I felt, at least, and we were talking about this in commentary, I felt that they are offering Real Sociedad the chance to go into a huge amount of space really quite easily. And actually, I was quite pleased post-game that Jules Koundé kind of reinforced that analysis. He said, I didn't like our last 20 minutes at all. And I think he's right. And I think they did tread a fine line, but they had found a way through by then. I agreed as well with what you said in commentary, is that throughout that period before Barcelona got the equaliser, and in particular before Lamine Yamal set up the second goal, there was a lot of them having the ball, carrying it to the edge of the Real Sociedad area, saying, oh, there's a big wall, turning around and coming back again.
Yeah.
So although they were dominating possession, there was a little bit of a lack of kind of imagination, creativity, incision. And I thought they had a slightly harder time of it than I think they would have anticipated. But they did eventually get through. I think it's worth pointing this out as well, just because, why not? Marcus Rashford's on a good run. I think I'm right in saying that 6 games in a row in which he's scored or assisted. He, in the first half in which they were struggling a little bit, Barcelona, was the one person really opening things up, going beyond people, making things happen. Occasionally, the last touch wouldn't be great. Occasionally, it didn't quite come off, but he is the guy that provides the assist for the first goal, albeit it's a corner. I'm always a little bit reluctant to call them assists when they're from corners, but someone's got to do the delivery, and the delivery's got to be good, and it was.
That's exactly what an assist is.
Yeah, I know, but I always feel like with corners, it's different from the player that takes responsibility on the pitch, carries the game forward, provides the final pass. I always feel from dead balls, it's a little bit different. Of course, it's an assist. Absolutely, it is. But I just always sort of read them a little bit differently, those ones. But it was a very, very good delivery, and it's really, really well taken as well by Koundé.
A Barcelona side, of course, missing some key players. No Rafinha for this game. He's going to be out for a while. Joan Garcia is going to be out for at least 6 weeks. So we had Wojciech Szczesny in goal because Ter Stegen is also out. Gavi is out. Fermín López is out. Alejandro Balde still isn't back as well. So this was a team that were missing, there'd be 5 starters there.
Well, we said it yesterday, didn't we? And I went through the list of the substitutes, and I was going through, and apologies because I haven't got the list in front of me, but I think I'm right in saying it was 1 17-year-old, 5 18-year-olds, 1 19-year-old, 1 22-year-old, if I remember rightly, and every single one of them was a Barcelona youth team product. I think on the bench, or was Ferran on the bench? Maybe Ferran was the one that wasn't.
He was.
Ferran started, didn't he? No, he was on the bench.
No, he was on the
sorry,
bench.
He was the one that wasn't. Yeah. And the good news for Barcelona is they do keep producing players that can do that for them, but they are in a slightly stretched position at the moment in terms of personnel.
We saw a debut for Dro Fernandez and the sort of number 10 position, the 17-year-old. People are very excited about him. You've picked him as one of your next-gen one to watch for the Guardian as well. Julie got his first 45 minutes of La Liga football. Some nice touches. I mean, he is literally a child, so maybe we should go a little bit, go easy on him. Some nice touches. He was dispossessed quite easily, though, a couple of times as well. Yeah,
and he was that thing you were saying of carrying the ball to the defence and then being forced to come back. It was him a few times, and the difference was that when he came back with pressure behind him, he tended to lose the ball rather than recirculate it because he had people on him. And as you say, you can see the size of him is still very, very different to the players around him. He's a number 10 at the moment, but I think certainly in the Spanish Football Federation, they think he'll end up being a number 8, playing a little bit deeper with the game in front of him rather than the game behind him. And I think that changes things enormously. So yeah, there's not a huge amount to write home about him from this game, but he is another one of those players coming through, and perhaps a little bit less excitement about him than there is about Tony and Guille, who are, of course, the cousins who are coming through as well.
Okay, that was Barcelona against Real Sociedad. You went to Rayo Vallecano against Sevilla as well, and saw Sevilla win thanks to a late goal from Aiko Adams. Sevilla's only shot on target. It ended up in the back of the net. Rayo, their only win all season, came on Matchday 1 away to Girona. They've played well, but they have only got 5 points from a possible 21. Don't want to make this just about Rayo. Obviously, give me your assessment on Sevilla as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'll give you Mateus Almeida's answer. The Sevilla manager post game was asked about. He said, given what's happened to Rayo this year, and you've been analysing them and you've been watching them, what would you think if you were Íñigo Pérez, the Rayo Vallecano manager? And he said, I'm not going to put myself in Íñigo Pérez's shoes. I'm going to put myself in the shoes of the Rayo Vallecano president. And I, as president of Rayo Vallecano, would think, I've got a great manager here. He said they're doing really good things. They're a really good side. They're really well organized. So we had to absolutely, I loved his phrase. We had to we had to bust our heads to win this game today. You know, he said that, and then this was put to Inigo, and Inigo was like, well, it's pleasing that people think we're playing well, and we are doing lots of things well, and we can't ignore that. But the results are what they are, and he talked about this kind of double reality, which is that they are doing lots of things well as a reality. That they have only won one game is also a reality, and those things kind of contradict each other. And he has to find a way, if you like, of fixing the results part of it without losing the identity and the conviction and the faith in the way they're playing, because actually they're not doing a huge amount wrong.
What about Sevilla?
Well, Sevilla I thought were interesting actually, because I thought what we saw with Sevilla is something that we didn't see last year. And I thought what we saw with Sevilla is we're starting to see a group. So we're not seeing a brilliant team, I don't think, but I think we're starting to see a group. I think we're starting to see a collective. I wouldn't call it a collective identity.
Did the barbecue help?
Well, I love that comment from
Matias Almeida organised a barbecue for the squad.
And last week, Alexis Sanchez said, what I loved about it was he said, yeah, the barbecue really helps, even if it's not that good. And I thought that's such a pointed remark at whoever's in charge of cooking the meat. Brilliant.
Nice to get together.
So, meat was a little bit ropey.
Meat was, yeah.
And I think there is an element of that. And, you know, I think there's sometimes a risk of seeing things that aren't there because people talk about them. But Almeida at least is talking about the group, and I think he's talking about, and I think you can see bits of it on the pitch. There is a sense of a shared responsibility. I wouldn't say necessarily a clear identity in footballing terms, but a sense of responsibility is there. And I would admit this is partly my fault, and so I don't want to. I don't want to kind of, what would I call it, deepen my original crime by now banging on about it. But I've always kind of really admired César Azpilicueta. So I asked Almeida about César Azpilicueta because of this idea that I was watching the game thinking there's a kind of a collective responsibility there. And I wonder about the quiet leadership of someone like Azpilicueta. And Almeida went off on this fantastic answer about what he's a proper leader. And the leaders that don't say it are the best leaders because they're not trying to sell something. They're truly about this. And he expanded it into Alexis Sanchez. And he talked about these two players who've won everything. They have had amazing careers. And there was a kind of a disbelief about it. He said, and here they are at Sevilla trying to help us out. And I thought that was quite a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. I mean, they are getting paid as well. You know,
they are getting paid.
And they're not volunteers. Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, it is true that I think Sevilla last year, you know, and we thought this year as well, that they were 3 or 4 bad results away from a massive, massive fire. You know, and the whole thing going really, really badly wrong. And I think they've managed to prevent that so far. It is true, though, that they're still not winning at home. I think all of their victories have been away so far this season. They probably need that in front of their own fans.
I think I'm right in saying it's only 1 win this year at home, this calendar year, something like that. Something ridiculous.
Okay, I didn't know it was that bad.
I haven't actually checked it, but it's pretty bad. I think it was against Las Palmas. Anyway, we'll see. They take on Barcelona next weekend, so big game. A big game for Sevilla. That's just about all we've got time for before we go. This is what happened in the Segunda. Depor and Cadiz are both on 15 points after Depor drew 1-1 at Eibar and Cadiz drew 0-0 with Ceuta. Elsewhere, Andorra are third after winning 2-1 at Racing. And Albacete were 3-0 down at Sporting and came back to win 4-3 with a 99th minute winner. Drama.
Tremendous.
Fantastic stuff. There's Champions League this week, obviously. Barcelona against PSG is the pick of the Spanish-involved ties, I would say, but some interesting ones as well. As we said, Real Madrid are in Kazakhstan, Atletico Madrid hosting Frankfurt, Athletic Club travelling to Dortmund, and Villarreal against Juventus. So some good games coming up in the Champions League. We'll discuss them on the Thursday bonus pod tomorrow. We're taking your questions for patrons, so come and join us, patreon.com/TSFP. There's lots we didn't get through on the pod, but if you've got a question, ask us and we'll answer it tomorrow. And if you don't want to do any of that, you don't want to part with €4.75 a month for extra content, it's fine. It's all right. We'll be back on Friday with a preview pod looking ahead to Matchday 8. So make sure you join us then, amigos. Adios.
Cheerio.